Hi, I'm Chen, a PhD student in computer science and engineering at UC San Diego. Today, we are going to talk about my project ExGSense toward facial gesture sensing with a sparse NearEye sensor array. This work was done with my collaborator Ke Sun and Professor Xinyu Zhang from our CSE and EC department. Today, more than ever, companies, researchers, and scientists are turning virtual reality as a way to collaborate remotely. The head-mounted VR enables a new form of telepresence applications and empowers professionals to virtually connect with one to another. With such tool, people can analyze the data collaboratively in an immersive way. Another great example is to teach students through VR, for example, the structure and assembling of mechanical components. To enable effective and efficient collaboration, the sense of co-presence is the key. One such key requirement is a capability to capture the full face of remote collaborators. This will enable one to perceive nonverbal cues of the remote users as indicated in this figure. However, this might be challenging. To address this, some existing research try to capture user space through camera-mounted outside and inside of the head-mounted devices. However, the issues of occlusions are becoming the major setbacks, not to mention the costs of additional optical components. Researchers also explore the sensors that use proximity and pressure. For example, light gates use the IR sensor to estimate the gaze direction inside the head-mounted devices and smart eyewears. There are also other works that use capacitive sensing to detect the gaze directions and strength sensors to attach on the VR foam to detect the basic facial gestures. But using such ways might be either complicated or only capable of detecting partial facial gestures. A third approach is to use the interferometry and tomography-based solutions. For example, the work called Interferometry used 8 ultrasonic transducers to detect 9 facial gestures. However, such approach is usually subjected to the problem of low sensing granularity. Further, this method will suffer from the impacts of underlying anatomical pattern variances across different users. Finally, people also attempt to achieve the similar goal with biosignal-based approach. Existing research uses the electro-optographic signal, or EOG, to detect eye gestures. For example, a series of work based on this kind of gene glasses demonstrated the potentialities of detecting eye gestures and emotions. Further, the electromyography, or EMG, has also been widely used to predict muscle-related gestures. For example, the silent speech detections proposed by the work Alter Ego. The final type of such signal is the EEG, which has also been widely used for coherent emotion detections, even though the setup might be somewhat complicated. So in our work, we propose the idea of ExGSense. First, similar to the spirit of biosignal-based approach, we use the NearEye biopotential transducers to detect the full facial expressions. To achieve this, we explore the paradigm of indirect sensing, where the lower facial gestures can be well detected through the transducers resting on the upper face. Second, we also propose a dual-branch multi-view representation learning pipeline, which can explicitly exploit the sensor diversities across time, frequency, and spatial domains. We further propose a simple recalibration approach for adapting the pre-trained model for different users. To the end, we build a proof of concept prototype and conduct a user study to verify its ability to concurrently track the fine-grained upper face eye and lower face mouse gestures by fully leveraging the underlying facial anatomy patterns. So how do we leverage the biosignals captured from the facial surface to infer the facial gestures? As an overview, we mainly use two kinds of biopotential signals, the EOG and EMG. So EOG is a microvolts level signal generated by eye movements. For the ease of analysis, this can be further decomposed as the ones measured from horizontal and vertical directions. On the other hand, the EMG is a millivolt signal generated by muscle contract and relax. For us, we use a method of indirect sensing. Essentially, although our transducers are partially contacted with three muscle majors around the eye, named as LLS, zygomatics, and RIS, they can still capture some wake signal propagating through the nasales. However, such modality is subjected to two unwanted signal noises, which are interperson variations and intersection variations. To evaluate the performance of our sensing system, our proof of concept prototype is built on the existing OpenBCI silicon board. For transducers, we enable the comfortable reusable electrodes with some reasonable signal quality degradations by removing the wet gel and foam tape on the surface. As for the transducer arrangements, we examine a vast amount of existing research and generate a design-based taxonomy. To the end, we decide to use the eye-centered and symmetric method. This will enable us to leverage the three aforementioned muscle majors engaging with upper and lower facial movements. This method will also leverage the spatial redundancies to minimize the imperfect sensing performance. In our work, we also exploit the virtual channel measurements, aiming to exploit the response of each sensing pass. We did a micro benchmarking and show the advantages of our solution and observe a slightly higher sensitivity of horizontal mouse gesture compared to the vertical one. This is in fact consistent with our initial finding that the horizontal mouse gesture would be involved more with the mid and upper facial muscles, whereas the vertical mouse gestures would be involved with the muscle majors near the jaw. The initial step of our algorithm is to find the optimal frequency separating the signal components of EMG and EOG. We use the same gesture set in our early benchmarking experiment and use the FFT features to do the feature significance test. Figure A and B shows the p-value corresponding to each FFT bins at each channel. And figure C to D shows the p-values corresponding to each frequency, but average across all channels. Notably, a smaller p-value would be corresponding to higher feature significance. To the end, we choose 25 Hz as the frequency for separating EMG and EOG. With these primitives, we design a dual-branch classification pipeline. The pipeline will allow the model to be trained with no mixture gestures, but capable of predict both mixture and non-mixture gesture set. So for example, if we have K kinds of eye gestures and L kinds of mouse gestures, the number of kind of training samples we need is summation of K and L instead of the multiplication of K and L. We use the cross-entropy loss and PyTorch to implement the model. and only the classification branch will be unfreezed for calibration process. For evaluation, we designed 42 facial gestures revised from the existing research. These gestures can be decomposed into 6 upper face eye gestures and 7 lower face mouth gestures. The first evaluation is single user evaluation, which means we train the model and test it on the same participants. This means the model is trained by 13 gestures instead of 42. As a quick overview of our finding, we show an overall of 93% of accuracy, but using a significant less amount of training examples. The accuracy of mouse gestures detections when mixed with eye gestures is around 98%, which shows the effectiveness of our design dual branch pipeline. Our second evaluation focused on the user-independent evaluations, but without partial calibrations. We aim to understand how the model can be adapted to an unseen participant. We use the leave one out cross-validation approach for the evaluations. So basically, we trained over 9 participants and tested on the remaining one. To the end, we see a satisfied overall accuracy for mouth and eye, which are 80% and 78%. An interesting fact, however, we observe is the relatively low performance for mouth gesture B, which is mouth open. This provides us some clue for what to calibrate in our subsequent phase. Finally, with an additional 2 minutes data of 6 no-mixture mouth gestures for tuning the model, we are able to see some improvement of overall accuracy to 77%. To the end, with the facial translation GAN, which is actually an open source framework for generating one's facial gestures using the gesture features from another person, we can use a software approach to guess and reconstruct one's facial gesture based on the output of our design pipeline. Admittedly, such method might not be perfect. For example, when it comes to the facial hair, the performance will not be so satisfied. Last, from our overall system perspective, we also pointed out several limitations. This will help us define our future work. First, although our work demonstrates a satisfying results, we expect a real-time and continuous facial tracking, as well as reconstructions. Also, while transferring to the new users, a small set of training samples are still required for the model calibration purpose. Part of future work can be investigation of the novel ways and tricks to achieve the zero-shot transfer learning. Finally, thirdly, we also expect a continuous effort on addressing the multifaceted issues related to usability and incorporations into commercially available virtual reality headset. And finally, a more diverse set of participants might be required in the future to further understand different kinds of noises caused by the interperson variations. Finally, this is all of my talk. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy our work. For more information, please refer to our paper.